Fox River Connectivity and Habitat Study. I am Dr. Akilah Martin. I am with the USAID Chicago District. I'm a planner, but in my role today, I'm serving as a public involvement specialist, and I'm also the queen of ceremonies, if you will. And so I'm so thankful to be here with you all. I want to go over a few things if you don't mind. So first, if you see the exit signs, there's a door here on one side of the clock and another door on the other side of the clock, or you can also exit the same way that you entered the building. The restrooms are also outside to my left. Directly, I can see the door to the restrooms. Please use those at your leisure. Also, I'll let you know, please fill out a comment card. I have them up here, but they're also outside. Make sure that you sign up if you'd like to do a verbal public comment outside on the sign-up sheet, because we will do that towards the end of the meeting. I wanted to go over the agenda as well and let you know what we're going to be doing tonight, all right? So first thing, we'll have Colonel Rockwell give some opening remarks from USAID, and then we'll have Wes Couture from the Illinois DNR give some opening remarks. And then we'll have our mom give remarks from the Fox River study, and then we'll have Mike Kubitz from the city of Elgin, as well as the mayor? Yes. As well as the mayor of the city of Elgin will give remarks. And then we'll have the big presentation from our staff at USAID, our Chief of Planning, David Bucaro, and Frank Baraldi. And then at the end of that presentation, that's when we'll start the public comments. Now, I want to be very clear with everyone, you have 3 minutes. We're going to have a stop clock up there so that you can see your time. At 3 minutes, I will say thank you so much. We really appreciate what you're sharing, and then I'll ask the next person to come up. All right? Is that cool so far? All right. Ryan, can you go to the next slide? All right, so just so you know, we're all together in this space, I want you to know all of us here, we are humans, we're people with hearts and souls. Please remember that as we're engaging with each other. So I want to go over a few things so that we can set the mood for each other, right? So please listen deeply, listen to the words. I want you to speak your truth. We're here to hear that. That's why we're having this meeting, to hear you. All right, so please feel free to tell us how you feel, but you only get 3 minutes to tell us how you feel. But you also have an opportunity to write to us and tell us how you feel. So make sure that you go to visit our project website so that you can send us comments that way as well. Make sure that you silence your cell phones or tablets. We want to make sure that everyone is able to hear and able to see everything, okay? Is that cool with everyone? I need to hear yes, so these are our expectations. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. So I'm going to end my part right now and invite Colonel Rockwell to come up first and remarks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Martin. Everybody hear me in the back? Does it work? All right. Okay, so first of all, my name is Colonel Kenneth Rockwell. I am the commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Chicago District. It's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. And thank you for coming out to hear us discuss and hear your comments on the public release of the Fox River Connectivity and Habitat Study. So this is the second of 3 public meetings that we're having this week. We had one yesterday and we'll have one tomorrow night. So thank you for coming out. If you'd like to attend tomorrow night as well, you may do so. Before we get started tonight, I did want to take a few minutes to address basically why we are here, to explain what this study is, what this study isn't, where the study is in its progress, and what the way ahead is for both the study and for the Fox River, which I know you all care so deeply about. So this study came about as a request from your locally elected leadership. And when I say locally elected leadership, I'm talking about your state representatives, your senators. They went to Congress and they asked for a study to be done on the Fox River and the greater Illinois basin on specifically how to improve the ecosystem of the area. That request was put into the Water Resources Development Act, and it ordered the Army to look into it and to do a study. So that is how the study came about, and that is what we are doing. So where we are today, so the Corps of Engineers has been doing that study. We're in the middle of that study. What we have presented to date and what we will talk about today is the Army Corps' draft comments on that study, on how to do environmental restoration along the Fox River. But that draft study is not complete. It is not final. The study does not yet take into account its impacts on its local communities and its economy. By law, this study that we are doing must include public feedback and your impact statements. That is why we are here today. We are here today to gather your impact statements. We are here to understand how this would affect you and to incorporate your views into the study and to provide a comprehensive view of really what ecosystem restoration and its impacts truly look like along the Fox River. So what's the future of this? One thing I really want to make clear is that this study is merely a report back to Congress on what they asked us to do. It does not authorize us to do anything along the Fox River. From here, your locally elected leaders, again, your state representatives and your senators, will have to decide to act or not to act on what's written in the study. Furthermore, the Army Corps of Engineers must have a non-federal sponsor to execute these projects. So what does a non-federal sponsor mean? It means that the federal government must have state permission and state sponsorship to do any ecosystem restoration along the Fox River. So what does that all mean to you? This study and today's public meeting, in and of itself, does not decide what happens along the Fox River. Your locally elected officials will ultimately decide what happens. Whether you support what the Army Corps' vision of ecosystem restoration is, or whether you do not, you must convey your viewpoints to your elected officials. So in a minute, we'll hear from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and you'll also hear from the Fox River Study Group. Both of those are our non-federal sponsors who sponsored the study. You will also hear from members of the USACE team, the Corps of Engineer team, who will present a summary of the study to date and the tentative plan to date for restoring the Fox River ecosystem. All right? And then as you heard Dr. Martin talk, we'll ask for your public comments. Those will be part of the public record, and they will be considered and responded to in the final report. Okay? So again, restoring the Fox River will require both local and state partnership. Your views do matter, and I thank you for being here today. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Rockwell. All right, so I want to bring Wes Couture from the Illinois DNR up for a few remarks.
Good evening, and first I want to say thank you to the Colonel and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers team to inviting IDNR to be a participant to this opportunity to share the findings of this study. An introduction myself, my name is Wes Couture. I'm the Section Chief of the Engineering Studies section of IDNR Office of Water Resources. We're greatly tied into this study in that within that section we have a dam removal program. We also do operations at Stratton Lock and Dam, Algonquin. We also do flood studies, but we're primarily here because of our focus on dam removal. Internally, we're working with Carpentersville, Montgomery, and North Aurora to study their dam in conjunction with this study. We're thankful for the participation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on this study, as we've been in good partnerships with them on other dam removal projects, including Hoffman, Blackberry, and others, as well as other flood control studies for the betterment of the state of Illinois. I want to say that the DNR is in full support of this study and its findings. It quickly aligns with the mission of the IDNR to protect our precious resource that we have of the water, the Fox Waterway. We find that dam removals always provide water quality improvements, aquatic habitat improvements, ecosystems, and also public safety improvements. That being said, there's many studies that support this, not only those done by IDNR Fisheries, the Illinois Natural History Survey, even outside the state of Illinois, any such as American Rivers has done studies greatly researching both pre and post dam removals to show the benefits of these. That being said, we know that dam removal may not be a good fit for every community, and IDNR is always looking to work with the locals to find out what the best solution is for that community. You'll hear later on this evening that Algonquin Dam is the only dam listed that's not actually recommended for removal. The reason that is that was a sole decision by the dam owner, as IDNR is the owner of that dam, knowing that it is there for the purpose of flat water recreation. We will say the dam removal is not beneficial for flat water recreation. That pool, the Algonquin pool, is tied directly to the McHenry pool by the lock and dam at McHenry Lock and Dam. Okay, so the removal of that dam would greatly impact that benefit. The McHenry Lock and Dam is actually protected by state legislation saying that it must be there, so it would take a change of legislation to change that. So the state often hears from community members and local officials and representatives from the area around Algonquin saying how much they support that flat water recreation. We see tonight in this study is our opportunity to hear from the other communities along the Fox River to understand what are the interests and priorities of those officials, those community members, and those legislators on what the future of the Fox River should hold. So we thank you and we greatly appreciate any feedback we receive from you tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Wes. So I want to bring up Cindy Screwcrud to introduce our mom for the Fox River Study Group. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Good evening. I'm Cindy Screwcrud, chair of the Fox River Study Group. That's a position I've held since our multi-stakeholder group formed 20 years ago to address water quality issues in the Fox River. Art Mom, who chairs our Dam Removal Communications Committee, will present a summary of our findings tonight. Art graduated from Cornell University's College of Civil and Environmental Engineering and spent over 4 decades in the fields of water pollution control and water supply engineering before retiring in 2012. That includes time as Elgin's Water Department's operations engineer during the construction, commissioning, and operation of Elgin's Riverside, now Nelson Water Treatment Plant. He has managed over $250 million of public utility construction contracts in his career. On his retirement, Art was appointed to the board of the Fox River Water Reclamation District. For the last 5 years, Art has been active on the boards of the Fox River Study Group and the Friends of the Fox River. So thank you, Art, for providing the Fox River Study Group's research that supports the course plan to this audience.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you, Cindy. Welcome, everybody. This is a terrific crowd, and I'm delighted to see it in the public interest. A few words about the Fox River Study Group. Do we have a clicker? Okay, thank you. We're a coalition representing and funded by the municipalities, the sanitary districts, and the environmental organizations with a shared interest in a cleaner and safer and more beautiful Fox River. Over 20 years ago, our Fox was classified as an endangered and impaired waterway that did not meet Illinois water quality standards. The responsibility to remove those impairments and meet those standards falls upon our local communities. The idea was proposed at that time that we could best determine locally how to achieve standards and avoid unnecessarily expensive costs that would otherwise have been imposed. The Fox River Study Group was born dedicated to using science, data, and collaboration to support improved water quality with sustainable policies and development throughout the Fox River watershed. Since inception, the Fox River Study Group has coordinated water quality monitoring, assisted communities in stormwater management and tributary improvement. We supported the permitting of $175 million in new water pollution control facilities, and in the past 2 years have completed a 10-year river modeling effort and published our new recommendations for removing the Fox River impairments based upon that effort. And after 10 years of research, okay, one more. Okay, And after 10-year research, design, and calibration of this computer model, how did we use this physical, chemical, and biological time machine? We specifically looked at what was causing the algae and dissolved oxygen problems in the river, responsible for most impairments. All the possible suspects were rounded up and researched. And after all the biology and chemistry and physics were done, our model presented us with a somewhat surprising conclusion. Every path leading toward solving the problem of low dissolved oxygen and a meaningful reduction in bottom sediments and algae requires removal of the dams. Removing the dams is key to removing our fox from America's list of impaired waters. The river will benefit locally with the removal of any one dam. And benefits will accrue more as adjacent dams are removed, thereby reestablishing the natural migratory paths of fish and mussel communities all along our river's main stem and up into its tributaries. This is why the Fox River Study Group has concluded dam removal is now our leading priority for action to improve river water quality, and why we are here. Our new 2022 implementation plan tells us we can't put our findings on a shelf to gather dust. Rather, what our research has revealed is so important to the future of our community and to the future of our river, it must be advocated for and made a reality. It makes great environmental and economic sense. Let me explain. First, we know people are concerned about what will happen to the river. We've researched and visited dams on similar rivers and found the shallow, ugly impoundments transition to beautiful and bountiful riparian prairie. More fish means more heron, more egrets, more eagles. If otters come back, like seen on the Cuyahoga River, maybe fewer geese. That's for the mayor. But we need to know more than it's just going to be beautiful, as important as that is. We need to know the predictable extent of the new shorelines and depth of channels to help inform boaters, fishermen, property owners, urban planners, and others to fully understand and plan for, not fear, the changes. This is a 60-day public comment period. We will all be submitting questions to the Corps to help improve upon this great opportunity. Sustainability means affordability. Dams are costly to own, insure, and maintain. But beyond that cost is another, much more substantial future cost. It's highly likely that if no action is taken, our waste treatment plants will be required to upgrade treatment technology to meet more aggressive national treatment standards. These upgrades will cost Valley citizens in excess of $150 million and be in budgets in less than 10 years. And that's just capital. Sophisticated treatment plants need to be operated and maintained. That costs money too. The Corps estimates it will cost $15 million to remove all 9 dams. Given the 65% federal share of this program, we want to spend $5 million now or $150 million in the future, in the near future. The ecological benefits will be highlighted by the Corps in a much greater depth in a few minutes. But we want to emphasize the newly exposed shorelines along clear and often shallow running waters will provide new habitat for a wide range of plant and animal species. This transformation will further clean the Fox's waters using the river's natural mechanisms. This is sustainability by definition. The Fox River Study Group recognizes recreation minuses as well as the pluses. Water sports may shift as water levels change. But with new large areas of prime habitat, there will be far more natural food for fish and a lot more structure to fish. And the new river connectivity will support more available and effective natural spawning for fish and mussels. Ultimately, dam removal will provide a lot more successful fishing for both more fishermen and more waterfowl. The death and danger of dams will be gone. Our dams provide no flood protection downstream and never have. Homes and businesses in a FEMA flood zone adjacent to a dam impoundment may no longer be in a flood zone when the dam is gone and water levels change. And we can't forget the Chamber of Commerce. We've all seen Chicago's riverfront success. A clean Fox dropping through quick rapids into and through our hometowns will be a new draw for thriving Riverside businesses. One shoe rarely fits all. Local additions, clarifications, adjustments inevitably will be made to this plan in the next several months. After all, this is a hearing for questions and comments. We urge you to ask questions. The opportunity the Army Corps is presenting us here has our and deserves your support. We ask you to tell your elected officials you support freeing the Fox. Meanwhile, the Fox River Study Group will closely monitor this program on multiple fronts, and as we continue our work to serve the best interests of the residents of the Fox River Valley and our Fox River. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Thank you, Cindy. Would like to welcome Mike Pumpins from the city of Elgin.
Good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank the Corps of Engineers for allowing us to participate in this study and to share comments and our thoughts with them prior to the night of the speakers event. So, Colonel, thank you. Great working with your staff. We look forward to continued success in working together. I have tonight our Water Director, Nora Bertram, and Senior Hydraulic Engineer, Wade Moore from Stantec Engineers. Stantec is an engineering consulting firm that is helping us with a comprehensive water study, not just of the dam removal, but of our entire system. And Wade will have some additional information to share with you tonight. So the reason I'm here tonight is that the removal of the Kimball Street Dam here in Elgin raises some unique challenges to the city of Elgin. 70% of Elgin's drinking water comes from the Fox River. That's 70%. We get 30% from groundwater wells, but those wells will not be able to supply enough water should we lose the ability to draw from the Fox River. Of the study area, the Kimball Street Dam is the only dam in the study area that is listed for water supply. All the rest are recreation. So that puts us in a unique spot. It's not an unsolvable problem for us, but certainly one that we want to present tonight to discuss for future considerations. While we support the creation of an improved natural habitat and river ecology, we as the city of Elgin must be able to supply clean, safe drinking water to our public 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So removal of the dam, we believe, significantly lowers the upstream pool, putting the Fox River supply at risk during periods of low flow. It's not all the time, won't happen every day, but in droughts or periods of excessive low flow, there will be challenges to the system the way it's currently configured. We're currently undertaking comprehensive water system studies to determine the impacts of the dam removal and to consider alternatives to the loss of the Kimball Street pool, should that happen. And this lastly, the city of Elgin supports improving river habitat. We're a member of the Fox River Study Group and support the efforts of that group and support the efforts overall of improved river ecology. But we must be able to maintain good human habitat as well. And that's a challenge we're facing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Wade Moore. Wade is going to share a few slides with you in a little bit more detail on what we believe some of the impacts will be from the removal of the dam.
Thanks, Mike. As you said, my name is Wade Moore. I'm a hydraulic engineer with Stantec. We were hired by the city to, among other things, take a close look at what would happen at the intake if the dam were removed. And so we've done a number of studies, and I'm just going to tell you what we've done up to date. We've got a few more things that we still need to do, but at this point, take a look at here's a map of the area. Now we're down right here. Here's Kimball Street Dam, Kimball Street, and the intake is up here, a couple miles upstream, in the pool that the dam formed. And it was built specifically to take advantage of that pool with the dam there. So when the dam is removed, obviously the river levels are going to drop, and that's what we took a look at very closely. So we can take a look at the next slide. One of the problems that the intake has right now, even with the dam where it is sediment. And this is a cross section of the river at the location of the pumping station. This is the intake pumping station here. It's looking downstream. The main channel of the river is on the other bank. and there's a high spot of sediment right in front of the intake. It's been a problem for many years, and so we have some mitigation alternatives to look at that, but if the river level is dropped, obviously, if it comes down a foot or so, no water will be able to get to the intake at all. So we've got some mitigation alternatives to look at for there. So go to the next slide. So here's a cross section of the pumping station as it was built. The yellow is concrete, and the pump is right here. There's some traveling screens in front, and then the intake opening out to the river. So here's the river bottom, and here is the top of the dam. So well up in the structure. The absolute minimum water level that this pump station can still run is right around 702. That'll give us a minimum water level right in here, just at where the pumps can still pull water without pulling in a lot of air and losing capacity. So remember that number 702, that's the minimum. You don't want to operate there, but you could in an extreme condition. Go to the next. Okay, so and one more. So we built a model, obviously, like what engineers do, of the river. We've got three conditions shown here. The upper one is the existing condition. This is the bottom of the river here, and the blue is the water. Here's the dam. You can see where it jumps up there, and the intake is up here. So this is a flow of 100 CFS, which is a very low river flow. That's a Q710, which is a 7-day continuous period of that flow once every 10 years. It's used to identify low flow conditions. But over this last summer, the river's down around 250 or 300 CFS, which wouldn't be much different than that. So we've had some very low river flows recently. But when the dam's in place, we've got plenty of water at the intake. Now, when the dam's removed, a couple of things can happen. One is that we get some erosion there, and this high spot, you can see this little high spot here called the Lincoln Level Saddle, is a local high spot in the river. If that stays in place, we'll still have enough water at the intake to operate. But we don't know if it's gonna stay there. There's a chance that it could, if it's erodible material, we could go down to a level that's, pretty much a flat level in the river and have a very low water level at the intake. So right now, we're looking at an investigation program to see what this is made out of. We have anecdotal evidence that it's pretty hard stuff and it may stay there. But as Mike said, we've got to be sure that it stays there, otherwise we won't be able to operate in all conditions. So right now we're working on a program to characterize what that is. Go to the next slide. So what happens when the river or when the dam is removed? The Corps is going to get into this a little bit, but we have a slide here, a couple slides, and you can go ahead. So there's three conditions here. One, today's condition, the red line is the shoreline, and you see it goes from bank to bank. But you can see there's an area, the light area here is where it's very shallow, and this is where that little saddle is. And the other areas where it's dark is fairly deep. So when the dam is removed, but the saddle remains, which is right here, we're gonna have a fairly narrow channel here, and then it'll widen back out again, because there'll be a pool of some kind up above. If the saddle is eroded completely, we're gonna have a very narrow channel through here and some wide areas that'll need mitigation with plantings and things. And the Corps will get into that as well. So we go to the next slide. So we've developed a few mitigation alternatives, like a feasibility level, just to give you the idea of what kind of costs we're looking at for different things. As I said, one of the problems that the intake has right now is sediment in front of the intake. One of the ways to solve that is to install some little rock dams in the river to force the flow over to the right bank in front of the intake. That'll keep the sediment moving and keep the area clear. Another alternative is to extend the intake out to this deep portion that is very deep out here to avoid all that sediment. That would cost about $4 million. Another alternative that was looked at by a previous consultant was moving the intake pump station to the other side altogether. And that pump station could also be modified and lowered to take into account any changes in the water level with the removal of the dam. Yep, and the The saddle, depending on what that is actually made out of, we could possibly armor it so it'll stay in position. And that may cost $3 to $6 million to do, depending on how soft that material is. Like I said, we're gonna do an investigation and find out what that is. We don't know exactly what it is right now. And the last one, I think there's one more, is an annual dredging program out front. This will be quite expensive over the long haul. That's a capital number. But you have to do that almost annually because that would just fill back in with sediment. Because the water's being drawn into that location. And it's very slow moving. So these are the kind of mitigation alternatives we're looking at, but it all comes down to that high spot in the river. Is that gonna stay or is it not gonna stay? Whether or not we can stick with the existing intake, we have to build a new intake. So these are the kind of things that like the Corps will be looking at in their next phase, but we just want to point them out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Wade. So these are presented tonight, just as what we said there. They're alternatives that we're looking at. We don't have a final answer tonight. The main purpose is to present this publicly so people can be aware of the challenges that we're facing as I think the city of Elgin and the Corps and the rest of the team try to meet the dual purposes of improved river ecology while maintaining adequate and safe water supply. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor David Captain and share a few words with you tonight.
Thanks, Mike. This has been a long time coming. Cindy's crew just spent about 10 seconds up in front here, but I'd like to introduce her and have her stand up. 20 years ago, Cindy and I met and had a discussion about what we needed to do to make the Fox River and the Fox River Valley a safer place. I work for the Fox River Water Reclamation District on the municipal side. Cindy worked for Sierra Club. And we came together and talked about creating a group to talk about creating good quality data that would allow municipalities and governmental associations to make good decisions. And that's what we did. We funded it through the support of the municipalities. I went out and went door to door raising money. The city of Elgin's put in money from this from the day one. So City of Aurora and many of the cities along here to fund the Fox River Study Group to produce the data that helps us move forward. To me, this is what local government does. We are more flexible than the federal government, the state government never told us to do this. We did it on our own. And they have benefited from the results of local government doing their work. That's why you're here today. Our goal was to get to this point where we could sit down as people in a community and talk about what we need to do to make things better for our community. I met with mayors just the other day and talked to them about what's going on in the Fox River. The mayors of communities up and down the Fox River and said, every community will have to have this kind of discussion. Where do you want to go? What's best for you? Elgin has, as our staff talked about, has different interests. This is our drinking water supply. We're the only ones that draw water from the Fox River at this level to provide drinking water. We have special concerns and we're going to address those. We have professional people coming in to make that decisions and help us make those decisions as a city council to move forward. That's what this is about. And every community, whether it's St. Charles, all the way down to Montgomery, will make those decisions on what the Fox River is going to mean to their community. I told them I'd speak tonight. I didn't really want to do that because I thought this was for the Corps of Engineers. But I said I would do it with the purpose of presenting one question. And I believe it or not, I still do this stuff. I sit at home and I did read the Army Corps' report and looked through it 2 or 3 times, and I found a common thread. At the end of, on the civil engineering portion of each segment, they talk about taking a dam out. and what the dam means to that community and how they're gonna do it for each city. And at the end of that report, or the end of that section, this is page E14 out of my report, and it talks about the city of Elgin. But this comment is referred to every city. And I will ask the Corps of Engineers to start the questions off with a common question that applied to every single city that has a dam on the Fox River. It says all sediment behind the dam that does not re-enter the river system, either by natural flow or by contractor assisting by massaging the areas, will have to be removed out to dry and hauling it out. No saturated material should leave the site. Newly exposed banks will be protected with erosion blankets and seeding of shrubs within 7 days. I want the Corps of Engineers to answer my question and pass that back to every community, because every mayor is going to have to address that question, and that ties us all together. We're doing this for the benefit of the Fox River. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Mike and Wade. So now I'd like to welcome the Chief of Planning at USAID Chicago District, David Bucaro. Also want to let people know, once this presentation is complete, we will start the public comment period. So again, if you haven't signed up, please see Alex, raise your hand, Alex. If you'd like to write a comment or a question, Mayor, you can write a question too on the comment card, and please send it, give that to Alex. All right, thank you all. All right, welcome.
Thank you, Akila. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Bucaro. I am the Chief of Planning for the Chicago District Corps of Engineers. I'm also an engineer with a water resources background. I've been with the district 23 years. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for taking the time. We're gonna go through the study, give an overview before the public comment area. Let's go to the next one. Just real quick, what the Chicago District does. We have an area of responsibility that covers portions of 3 states, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and just the real sliver in Ohio. About 31,000 square miles. And our key civil works missions include flood risk management, both on riverine and coastal environments, navigation, both commercial and recreational, aquatic ecosystem restoration, that's the purpose of this study, and then we have a regulatory mission as well. Let's go to the next. Okay, the Colonel introduced this. This particular study is part of an overall Illinois River Basin Restoration Program that was authorized by Congress in 2000. And it allows us, the Corps, to study the entire Illinois River Basin and develop a comprehensive plan to identify opportunities for aquatic ecosystem restoration. A comprehensive plan was developed in 2007. It's available on our website. The Fox River was an area that was identified in that comprehensive plan as a critical restoration project, a CRP. This authority allows us to do detailed feasibility, design, and implementation at a cost share of 65% federal, 35% non-federal. So the study that we're presenting to you, that you're reviewing, was cost shared with the Illinois DNR and the Fox River Study Group. They provided 35% of that cost. Next slide, please. So why the Illinois River Basin? Why did Congress authorize us to look at restoration? Well, in 1986, Congress recognized that the Illinois River was a nationally significant ecosystem. There's not a whole lot of those in the United States, but the Illinois River Basin was identified as nationally significant. Also identified nationally as a river with a large restoration potential by the National Research Council. It's one of the busiest inland waterways linking the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River through Illinois with year-round traffic. And it's utilized by 40% of all North American waterfowl and and 81% of waterfowl in the Mississippi River flyway is utilized through the Illinois River system, including the Fox River. It's utilized by numerous bird species, over 300 bird species, over 100 fish species, and over 30 mussel species. Next slide, please. So the program goals, so like I said, this is an overall program. The Fox River is one part of that program. So the overall program goals includes reducing sedimentation, restoring side channels and backwaters, increasing fish passage, restoring floodplains, repairing an aquatic habitat and function, naturalizing hydrology and water levels, and improving water and sediment quality. The Fox River habitat and connectivity, the study addresses 3 of those program goals: increasing fish passage, restoring floodplain, repairing aquatic habitat and function, and improving water and sediment quality. I'm going to turn this over to Frank Veraldi, who is a biologist. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. My name is Frank Veraldi. I am a fish biologist and restoration ecologist. I've been with the Chicago District Corps of Engineers for 25 years this month. I went to U of I in Champaign to get my degree in ecology. Some personal things. I like to woodwork also and play some ice hockey. But let's get into the study. So the study area, here's the overview. It's in the Mississippi River Basin, of course, Illinois River. Fox River flows directly into the Illinois River. The watershed is primarily agriculture and urban in the riparian zones and within the rest of the upper watershed and the tributaries. 2 counties we're looking at are Kane and McHenry. And municipalities included are Algonquin, Carpentersville, Elgin, South Elgin, St. Charles, Geneva, Batavia, North Aurora, Aurora, and Montgomery. The study area target is between Algonquin and Montgomery. You'll see the list in a second here. And that stretches about 52.1 miles, I believe. So let's do the bottom line up front. What are we talking about? So what we recommend here, we're recommending taking out all the dams except the Algonquin Dam in the study area, all the way down to Montgomery. This will generate 298 average annual habitat units. A habitat unit is the area times the quality of that area. And to get the quality, we use a riverine habitat index that was developed by the Ohio EPA for rivers, which we'll show you the results in a little bit. About 21 miles of habitat will be restored by returning it to free flowing and restoring those natural processes. 34 miles will be reconnected for fish passage and mussel traveling, all to the tune of about $14.5 million would take to do that. We don't have any negative effects identified at this point, but today is one of those points in the study where we're trying to gather that information. The feature type, what we're talking about is natural. We're not putting anything in the river. We're just taking the dams out and letting the river heal itself. So with that comes no O&M operations and maintenance. So we don't have to go out, once it's established in the riverine system, you don't have to do any kinds of work to keep it functional or spend money at that. Now, we're recommending taking all the 9 dams out based on ecosystem purposes only. Today we're here to get your opinions and what the municipalities think about their dam and if they, what they feel is right for their dam, whether they want it part of the project or not. Here's a list of dams in Illinois, Stratton being in the uppermost part that controls the chain of lakes, all the way down to the big Dayton Dam, which is at the mouth of the Fox River. That one generates power. Next slide. Here's the photos of all the dams in the study area. Overall, in the watershed, it's an urbanized and agricultural watershed, so all those things that come with that, sedimentation and lots of nutrients. Also, in the process of doing that, lots of wetlands are filled and drained, so that also alters the hydrology of the river. Infrastructure intrusion. You have lots of bridge abutments, flood walls, the dams, intake structures, outfalls, things like that that go into the river and kind of disrupt the continuum. And then fragmentation is the big one this study is looking at, which is primarily caused by the dams. Upstream of the dams, we have lake-like conditions, and then downstream of the dams, we have our free-flowing river conditions. Slide, Ryan. I don't have a laser pointer, but you can, this is called the long profile of the river, which shows the gradient, how much it falls down to the Illinois River. And our subset of dams is in a really steep part. Oh, thank you very much, sir. There we go. So we're right here in this really steep gradient section here, and you can see how small the dam pools are as those little triangles because of that steepness. Is that right? Sediment characteristics. Okay. We, Illinois DNR did an extensive study in 2003. It's a little old, but we went back and checked the physical conditions behind the dam, and they really haven't changed to change the sediment characteristics. So we have impounded bed load. The bed load is all the material that travels on the bottom of the river. That's usually boulders, cobbles, gravel, and sand. Sand is kind of in between, that can go over the dam. Then we have a fine layer of silt, which in big floods will get washed up and sent over the dam. But typically gets deposited right behind the dam because the flow stopped. We took 32 core samples and 52 surface samples for metals, pesticides, a whole laundry list of contaminants, and didn't find much. Everything was below background levels or within residential standards for people to live around. So there's no concern on this river if we release the cobble, sand, gravel, and some of the silt that cause contamination downstream. So right directly behind the dam, we have kind of our lake-like condition. It's actually trapped somewhere between a lake and a river, and it's really confusing for the organism. So the closer you get to the dam, the less species you get, and the less abundance of fish and mussels and other organisms. And then as you go upstream and get out of the influence of the dam, we start to pick up more species as the water starts to flow a little bit, and the substrates start to clean up a little bit. Downstream of the dam, now we have a situation where we don't have sediment right below the dam, and the water's pretty clean, so it kind of scours everything out for sometimes 500 to 1,000 feet downstream of the dam. A lot of times you'll see the bedrock exposed below the dams, and only large rocks and things. So that condition's also a bit adverse because you lose lots of substrates, but it's much, much better for organisms. And we do different kinds of things, fish that are specific to fast flowing water and that live in cobble riffles and need that oxygen. Okay, so to sum it all up, we do what's called problems and opportunities. First problem, riverine fragmentation prevents fish and mussel migration during all flows. There's no possible way fish or mussels can get by these dams. Also limits tributary accessibility. A lot of the tributaries to the Fox are extremely healthy and have really good habitat and fish populations. And fishes on the main stem a lot of them need access to these to spawn and reproduce, like the quillback sucker and flathead catfish. Altered riverine processes, these are things that keep the river healthy and habitat sustained. Rivers create and sustain their own habitat by moving water and sediment. So when you alter that with the dam, those processes stop, and then you get a very homogenized, very similar kind of channel with little structure. Also also comes into play is the water quality there, because the water moving through over substrates, over woody debris, over plants is a natural mechanism for cleaning up the water. And also oxygenates it. Situations behind the dams, because that fine sediment's dropping out and there's no velocity to the water, minimal flow, and it gets hit with a lot of sunlight. So you develop lots of algae and the biological oxygen demand drops. So not a lot of oxygen for organisms to live behind the dam. Other issues in the watershed, riparian plant communities, water quality degradation that are clearly described, human safety at the dams, and then aesthetics, which is subjective, dependent, if you like the lake system or a river system. But we always discuss that. Next slide. So that boils us down to what are we going to do? So we need objectives. What objectives are we going to hit? Our authority only gives us authority for ecosystems and habitat. So our focus here, we came up with 2 objectives. One is to restore the river to allow it to restore itself. Existing run-of-the-river dams alter riverine conditions, limiting the natural recovery. And then we're going to measure that improvement with that qualitative habitat index I mentioned with the annual habitat index. Second objective is to get fish and mussels swimming throughout the whole river, or at least the stretches. Currently 70% of the river is impounded by the dams, blocking passage for riverine organisms. Improvement here is a yes or no, can things get by or can't they get by? Constraints and planning considerations. We also think about other things, what we don't want to do. The main one is to flood people, always with our ecosystem studies. We're always with ecosystem projects restoring hydrology. And so we want to make sure we're not flooding anyone out that's outside of the ecosystem footprint. And then planning considerations. We want to avoid adverse impacts to all the good habitat and species that are there in the free-flowing sections. We want to avoid construction disturbance during critical spawning, typically during spring for most of our fish and mussels. And then minimize short-term adverse water quality effects. Something that the mayor mentioned when we're working around the dam. We'll use best management practices and things like that. We also want to get your ideas today for the last 2, which are minimize adverse effects to human recreation, and we want to avoid and minimize adverse effects to municipal infrastructure, such as the water intake structure we talked about today. Here's our measurement of what's going on in the river. You can see the blue bars, that's in the free-flowing sections, and then the red bars are directly behind the dam in the pool. This is the qualitative habitat evaluation index developed by the Ohio EPA. It's basically a laundry list of all the riverine components that need to be there. And when they developed that study, they correlated it to the index of biotic integrity for fishes. So they did statistical analysis to make sure their habitat sections are sensitive, that they're going to change, that the fish community is going to change to. Okay, so now we know the quality and what we gotta kind of achieve with our objectives and our assessment there, and now we gotta come up with ideas, how are we gonna fix things? These things have been addressed for such a long time that there's lots of scientific papers on each of these measures and how effective they are and how they work. Our feasibility study is pretty detailed on this if you're interested in reading, and you can even go and read the papers we identify that talk about them. The first one is dam removal. That's the most tried and true one. You take it out of the system, everything restores itself. We also consider partial removal sometimes if there's cultural resource considerations, like at the Hoffman Dam. That was a historic structure, so we wanted to keep little bits of the dam for that kind of historic visual aspect, so we left in the little weeds. Here on the Fox River, we don't have any historical, cultural resources identified in the dams. So we're probably not going to recommend that one. You'll see when I get to the matrix that discuss what we selected. Bypass channel, that's excavating and grading and then placing rock. This picture here is done on Blackberry Creek, I believe, or no, I'm sorry, Big Rock Creek in the Fox. And then this rock ramp was also done in Big Rock Creek. That's basically just piling enough rock up downstream to try to get fish over. And the last one is a mechanical kind of thing called a fish ladder, which is basically a big piece of steel with baffles that fish can get up. But only works for powerfully swimming fish, big suckers and carp. It's used out west mostly for big salmon and sturgeon. Okay, here's our screening matrix. Here's where we put it all together. We have our objectives in there, and other parameters we look at for each of those measures. We have our measures lined up on the left side. The first column is our first objective. That's, does it restore the habitat of the river? The second column is, does it allow for fish passage and mussel distribution? The third one is construction cost. The fourth one is O&M activity. How much work do you have to do after you do the project to keep it working? And then the fifth column is how much money you spend on that same activity to keep it working. The sixth column is water quality. Does it improve water quality or not? The seventh one is safety, and then human safety around the dam. And then the fifth one is sums everything up, whether we retained it or not. And you can see the scale is really tipped towards just removing the dam out. It really is your best bang for your buck and most justifiable alternative. Everything else doesn't meet all of the objectives and goals of the study, and it gets pretty expensive over a long period of analysis. The period of analysis for this study is 50 years, so we look out into 50 years to estimate these things. Here's what the initial cost would be versus the habitat units gained for each dam. You can see these are relatively cheap things to do with major positive effects. All these tables and graphs I'm showing are in the feasibility study, much more explained if you're interested. These three here are what the Army Corps has to do to ensure that we're recommending a cost-effective plan. Cost-effective plan means there's no other plans out there that are cheaper that give the same or greater benefits. So it's an Army Corps program we run through, and it generates, I think it generated over 1,500 different alternatives in this cost-effective scatter table here. And then it sums it up here with the bar chart showing each of the dams that came out as what we call a best buy. So that's your best bang for your buck to get those benefits. Okay. Another part of the analysis is part of our National Environmental Policy Act requirements, which this meeting is being conducted under today, where we assess all the impacts to the environment based on our tentatively selected plan. We look at the environment, the ecosystem, cultural resources, and impacts to people along the river. And so we've done a pretty good job with the ecosystem and cultural resources part, and we're here tonight to gather more information for the people part. So we're hoping to get your comments to help us fill this out. Okay, and so our tentatively selected plan again. Based on all that, we're going to remove 9 dams. They're all justified based on ecosystem restoration benefits, being very cost effective, improving water quality, and all those human safety and other aspects I showed in that little table. So what are we going to do at each site? We'll fully demolish the dam with equipment and clean everything up to a tidy state. We won't leave anything in the river that's not natural. sedimentation doesn't get in the river. And we also have a set of adaptive management measures. So each dam will be constructed over a period from 3 to 5 years, depending on the level of risk we feel for each dam. And during that 3 to 5 years, we'll have options in our contract for construction in case something kind of goes a little different than we thought. For instance, if we remove one of the dams and then the water drops down and one of the bridge abutments upstream starts to get a little erosion, we can engage one of those adaptive management measures and go put cobbles on the bridge so it doesn't erode. Or, like the mayor indicated, we can go and plant areas with cover crop to make sure that silty areas don't get eroded into the river. And anything that might happen, there's always surprises in dam removals. For example, when we removed the Hoffman Dam, there was a surprise another dam underneath. The sonar we used just identified it as bedrock, but when we dropped the dam, there was another little old dam in there. And then we had enough money to remove it with the adaptive management option. There was also a boat in there buried upstairs. So yeah, I think I hit on all the benefits. This table summarizes it up. And next, John or David, are you gonna do this one? Okay. Dave's gonna come and talk to you about water levels and what we found when we removed the dam.
Thank you for the pointer, this is gonna be helpful. Okay, so there's been a lot of questions about what will the river look like post-dam removal. So we looked at, we actually developed a model, a hydraulic model, to look at a range of flows from extreme low flows, like Wade had mentioned, the 7Q10, through normal flows to then high flows during flood conditions. What we are showing here are really the two different flows, the low flow and the what we call the normal flow. And what you see in here is a profile view. This is the black line here, the dots are the cross-sectional, the lowest cross-sectional point in the river, which we call the fallow wag. That's the lowest point in the river. And then the blue line, there's two different blue lines here. The first one is existing conditions, and as you can see, the different impounded areas, each dam is creating a flat water pool. And then after removal, you have the flat water pool is removed and you have more free flow conditions. And so what's shown on the right-hand side is a typical difference in surface area under two different flow rates. And so the green area is the area that would no longer be wet after the dam is removed. And in our H&H appendix, hydrologic and hydraulic appendix, there's many different maps in there across the study area that shows the differences. Let's move to the next slide. So I do have two examples. There was two dams that were removed in the mid-2000s on the Fox River. And we have some photos that show what the river looked like before when the dam is in place. This is North Avenue Dam. It was removed in 2005. You can see the dam right here after dam removal. The width of the channel dropped a little bit. It's a little narrower, but not too much. The depth definitely got shallower. But what you'll see in this picture after is it's kind of like a rapids area. You'll see actual flow happening in there. Let's go to the next slide. Another example is the South Batavia Dam. It's not too far from here. That was removed in 2006. There was two dam structures here that were removed. The difference between the before and after are not appreciably different either. You have a narrowing of the channel up in here versus the impounded area. So there's a misconception that if you remove the dam that the river dries up. These dams do not have any storage, which means Every drop of water that comes into the impounded area of the dam flows over the dam. And so just removing the dam is really affecting the elevation of the water upstream of the dam, not the flow in the river, not going to dry up the river by removing these dams. And here's two examples on this river within the study reach that we're talking about that were removed, and the river did not dry up. Let's go to the next slide. So the other thing that we looked at was flood conditions. You know, what happens when there's a big rainstorm and the river is ripping through there and we remove these dams? What happens there? Are we inducing flooding? And the answer is no. We're not inducing flooding, we're actually reducing flood risk in the area just upstream of the dam, because that when you remove the dam, it does get a little narrower, and that area then returns to the floodplain. But these are not really high dams. Frank went through pretty quick on the table, but they really range from 5 to 15 feet in height. So not a huge, these are not really tall dams. So under flood conditions, the change in depth is much less. As you can see, this is a 10-year flow. So once every 10 years, you know, when you remove it, the elevations are not much different in these impounded areas. So very little impact during flood conditions, which is a good thing. We're not inducing flooding, we're providing maybe a little bit of benefit to flooding. I think, Nick, you're next, talking about real estate.
Good evening, my name is Nick Lauser. I'm a realty specialist with the Corps of Engineers. I'm going to do a pretty quick overview of the real estate plan for this project. If you're interested in the topic, there is a whole appendix on real estate. It'll go more in depth. There's maps, lots of nice pictures in there, and it's a little less dense than the other appendices. So if you want to read part of the report, it's a good part to read. But for this project, from a real estate perspective, this is a great project. It's very straightforward. For all 9 dams we're removing, we're looking at just under 24 acres. And the only real expensive part is going to be the fee simple estate. So all these dams are owned by somebody in the state of Illinois. Municipalities, or Kane County owns one of them. And on those, we'll need local support. We'll need the owners of those dams to provide those in some way so that we can remove them. We'll need to provide the real estate. And that's going to be a fee simple. We'll get fair market value to whoever, whether that's purchase or credit, depending on how it is arranged. And then we've got the rest of the real estate is basically easements across land, mostly public land, about 90% public lands. And that's going to be easements to allow us to access, get equipment in upstream and downstream of the dam. So if you look at the real estate plan right now, it's kind of our every scenarios in there, because we basically need to build a map so we can appraise and get an estimated value for what it's going to cost. So we've got a bunch of land on there. It's 90% public land. When it really comes down to it in the end, design phase, we probably try and bring that in. So we're doing all the work on public land. We're not going to come on private property. And anything we're removing from the dam, if we've got that gravel, rubble, rebar, whatever these dams are made of, or whatever inside, if we find a boat underneath, then that's going to be taken to an appropriate recycling facility, either reuse or disposal, depending on the consistency of it. And the land's created by this, so in Illinois, unless your deed says otherwise, if you live on the property, or if you live on the river, any river, or if a government own it, your deed's going to go to the thread of the stream. So the size of these parcels, and if you look at the county parcel maps, depending on your county, it may be a little confusing, but the property line is actually in the middle of the river for all these. And so that property, the acreage is going to stay the same, and basically that water level is going to come down. But nobody's gaining additional acreage of their property. They're just going to get additional dry land. So we've got a few quick questions. So if you own property on the river, or if you enjoy parks on the river, what's it going to look like? And Dave has kind of covered this, Frank's covered it as well. So we're expecting that water level is going to come down, so the river's going to draw down. It's gonna move in from the bank, so we've got, if you look in the report, we've got various images of what that may look like. And based on our preliminary studies, we're expecting it's mostly gonna be bedrock in most areas. There are soft, mucky areas, and like Frank said, we can address those. We can do erosion plantings, or take other measures as needed to account for that. So you'll still own this property. You can use that land as you use, if you own property on the river, you can use that land as you would any other property with all the same rights as you would on your property currently. If you have a dock on the river, and I'm not quite sure if in Elgin this is quite as common, but those docks are authorized under 2 permits. One is a Corps of Engineers permit from the Chicago district. That's a standing permit. You don't need to fill out any paperwork. It basically says if you live on this river, you're allowed to have a dock as long as you have all the other required permits. So the other permit's gonna be from DNR. And all those dock permits will continue to be authorized. So if you have a dock, you can move it in, you can move it to the new Oregon high water mark, comply with the same size restrictions you do now. You don't need to change your dock. You get a new dock, you just have to be moved, and you can still use it as you would now. And then we get a big question, and this is a question I've been reading. I think I've done about 24 hours in the last week of reading about economic studies. So if you enjoy economic studies, I highly recommend you read this. We get a lot of questions about property values when we do these dam removals, or we do ecosystem projects in general. In general, what we find across studies all over the nation, both ecosystem restorations in general and these low head dam removals, you're going to see that either we're not seeing much change in property values, or we're going to see an increase. And that's going to depend, when we look at the broader market, when you're selling your home, you're selling your property, somebody's going to buy, and everyone buys property for different reasons. And across all that, these studies look at large areas, they look all over the country. We can't find data supporting the idea that property values would go down. What we can find data supporting is that places that people want to live have greater property values. And just looking around here, I can see we've got about 4 or 5 local government employees for the city of Elgin. We've got about 180 people in this room that care about the city of Elgin. And that's why the property values in Elgin are going to go up. They're going to continue to go up. So, as far as property values, based on the data we have available, if you have other data we'd like to see it, we can't say that those property values would go down. We couldn't support that with any data, looking at the market and looking at past studies. As far as property taxes, that's similar question. We're not property tax experts. You've got a county tax assessor, you may have your own accountant. I would talk to them about how these changes may affect. One thing you may look at if you're going to end up with some exposed land and it's going to be, this new land you don't know what to do with, is there's various local groups that purchase conservation easements from landowners. And conservation easement is an option that can reduce your tax burden. Someone else is going to come in, they're going to do conservation work on your land. So the native plantings, they'll ensure there's wildlife habitat. They're going to do what they can with the size of land you have. The more, people in the area that are interested in that, the better option it is. But they can reduce your tax burden. I know Illinois DNR has got stuff on their website, go more into the legislation and the rules for conservation, but it is an option. So we can't speak to all the tax implications, but there are options. We don't expect your taxes would go up from this. There are options. If you've got this land you're not looking to use, it could reduce that. Thank you.
Last slide. So just talking in general in terms of the implementation schedule. So we're at the feasibility report. So the lower right-hand side, this is the entire feasibility report. We're about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through. We're at the public review phase right now. We're going to incorporate all the comments that we hear from you during these public meetings that we receive from you, either an email or snail mail. And that allows us to then revise the report, revise our recommendation, finalize it, and then we're thinking approval about a little over a year from now. If that moves forward and we have a non-federal sponsor that's willing to move forward with design and implementation, then we would execute a project partnership agreement. that would then allow us to design the project and then construct it. That's all pending receipt of federal and non-federal funds. We do not have federal funding right now to design or implement the project. If everything, goes forward, we're thinking, about four years or so until we would, have, construction, to demolish, or remove one or more of the dams. So that's the end of our, presentation. There's plenty of time